The psalm, this is not about the sermon, but just pay attention. You yourself created my inmost parts. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I will thank you because I am marvelously made. Your works are wonderful, and I know it well. Now listen, whenever you're having trouble with body parts, you keep in mind that there are other body parts which pick up for the parts that aren't working so good. And that's what the psalmist is thanking God for. That you're able to be wonderfully made, so well made in fact, that you can adjust when things aren't working just as they should. Which happens to some of you. Never to me. Today we want to talk about call and calling. Sincerity is the key. You can fake that, and if you can fake that, you've got it made. Oh, that's not a call. That's comedian George Burns said that. But here's another comedian who said, W.C. Fields said he got caught reading the Bible one time in his room, and he looked at the person who walked in and he said, I was looking for loopholes. Loopholes and sincerity are part of the theme today. And I bring them up only because of the character you're introduced to today. Nathaniel is a person who is both sincere and has given up looking for loopholes. Just gave it up. And it's quite a compliment that Jesus pays to Nathaniel right from the get-go. He says to him at first meeting, here's truly an Israelite in whom there is no guile or no deceit. And you might, guile and deceit, of course, you know those words. And John uses the word in Greek, Jesus' word doulos, which means decoy. So you've all met people in your life who have suckered you. You've all been decoyed into thinking somebody was a fabulous human being and they've turned out to be a thief, a robber, or really bad for you. And it's taken you a while to sort that out. That's what the word decoy or deceit or guile means. And here Jesus is paying Nathaniel a great compliment and saying, hey, you don't have any guile. You're not a decoy. You're the real thing. A very high compliment indeed from Jesus. And Jesus' comment about Nathaniel being a true Israelite indicates that God's intention for the people of Israel and for the new Israel, the church, are to be the kind of people who are without guile. That is a simple way to put it, people of integrity or people of character. That is what our calling is and what our calling is to be. And that's reinforced by one more allusion in the gospel reading where he says to Nathaniel, hey, you're going to see angels ascending and descending upon the Son of Man. And that's a reference to the dream of Jacob, right? We are climbing Jacob's ladder. Right? Sunday school song. And it's a reference to the way in which wherever Jesus is, the angels are going to be ascending and descending so that heaven and earth are really close together wherever Jesus is. And it reminds us, all of us, that Jesus himself is our holy place. And as God dwelt at Bethel, so he dwells in Jesus. And wherever Jesus is present, there the angels and heaven and earth are linked together. So what Jesus is saying in the gospel reading today is that honest character like that of Nathaniel is to be one of the mark of the new Israel, of we Christians, people who are followers of Jesus. And to means to live with our hearts open to truth and not run from it. It means knowing ourselves or being confronted with ourselves in ways that we know we don't like about ourselves, but being truthful enough to recognize that fact and begin to make whatever adjustments we can with our lives. And to be truthful about that. And also to be truthful with other people, to be a mirror for them as called on. You'll note that one thing Nathaniel abandoned in a hurry when he was introduced to Jesus. First of all, the first thing he said, can anything good come out of Nazareth? You'll notice he abandoned that idea of truth, preconceived truth. so that he could actually take an honest look at the guy by the name of Jesus and say, this is an honorable man. The difficulty of for all of us is the recognition that Martin Luther's insight that when you receive a call, it's likely to occur at the times and the occasions when you're really not expecting it. It's likely to occur, as Martin Luther said, in, with, and under the cross. That is usually when your life is in the toilet, in the tank. Yeah, that's better, isn't it? All right, anyhow, when your life is not going well, that's oft times where you're going to meet the Word of God. In the good times, you know, we're all sassy, because we all figured we got things figured out, we're moving along, no fuss, no muss, we got everything going good for us. But it's in the times when we hit the wall that there is where God, through Jesus, is going to be present. And that is where he is going to make his call. And his call will always be an invitation. You're here now, follow me, and let's go this way. I was reading an article by a gentleman who's an attorney. He's been divorced about 2 years now. And when he was divorced, for that 2 years, he also, about a year into that, he also had a girlfriend. And after the divorce was finished and he had the girlfriend, his girlfriend also dumped him. As well she should have. Because he spent the better part of their relationship and their time together complaining about his ex-wife. All right? You can't build a relationship, you know, complaining about your ex in a new relationship. It just doesn't work. And you know, a lot of you maybe have friends or have had your own experiences with that, realizing that the first girlfriend or boyfriend after you've been separated or divorced usually doesn't work so well because you spend too much time complaining about the ex. Until 3 years down the road, you reach a level of maturity and realize that you actually participated in ruining your marriage too. Well, this guy was finally getting to that point, but not there yet quite. Except he had lost his wife, lost his girlfriend. He was a lawyer with a small business firm, and that was starting to go down because he couldn't focus on his business, so he had to move to another smaller office and all of that kind of thing. And all the while, he kept talking to a guy that he knew, a pastor, you know, who just suggested, why don't you read some parts of the Bible? Just open it up and just read parts of it. And so the lawyer did that, and what he was finding is that in the New Testament, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and especially, he was finding there was a lot of thank yous and joy in those sections in terms of people's response to the work that Jesus had done, to his call, to his healings, to his miracles and parables and teachings and all of that. So what he decided to do was this. He was going to write one thank you note every day for 365 days for an entire year. And that is what he did. His first thank you note was to the, now I'm not sure, the barista at a coffee place. Is that the server or is that a kind of cookie? That's the one who makes the coffee, the server, okay. His first note, oh, no, I don't get out very often. But his first thank you note was to the barista, whom he had been going to for some years. And then his second thank you note was to the people who had cleaned his office when he had it. And so on and so on. And every single day, he just dedicated himself to that task, the discipline of saying thank you. And he found that it ranged widely, and he really had to start looking at what to say thank you for. And he found out that on occasion, one time, he thanked the bus driver because his car broke down and he didn't ride the bus, but he wrote a thank you note to a bus driver who dropped him at the right place instead of driving 20 blocks down the road and saying, oh, you missed your stop. That is one of the ways that God is going to meet you. When your life is just gone bad, for whatever reason, it is going to be underneath the badness that the goodness will begin to emerge. And that is the call to follow me. And Nathaniel, Philip did follow Jesus, and they began to see an enrichment of their lives, which is many of you have experienced in your own faith and your own life. C.S. Lewis wrote an essay years ago called The Abolition of Man. Right, you know C.S. Lewis, right? He wrote the Chronicles of Narnia. Yeah. Okay, he was also an essayist and wrote this. He said one of the big questions and issues that he was having as a man in the contemporary world, see if this resonates with you or not. We make people without chests. Without chests. And we expect from them virtue. We laugh at honor, and we're shocked to find traitors to the human race in our midst. My sense is that we have leaders all over the world who have great educations, but whose lives are marked by a selfish egoism. They're men and women who, highly educated, are absent the character to bring the intellect into healthy relationship to the imagination, the creative aspect of life. Virtue is always about the development of character, which is the mediating center between passion and the mind. Now that resonates very strongly, as you know by this time, with me, as I think we are filled with passion all over the country, and yet filled with mindlessness, lack of intelligent thought, lack of creativity, and you can't have creativity if you don't harness the passion of your life, your calling, with the mental ability to think through how you're going to put that passion into action. We Christians call character by a variety of names, right? Calling, vocation, spiritual gifts, grace, soul, agape, all of those different kinds of language. But the one thing that is true is that it's a description of the mediating center of faith that allows us to be both passionate and use our brain in how best to follow our calling. And the stakes are not small, because Lewis saw the consequence as the abolition of men and women, in the sense of being fully human beings without heart, a mediating center. Well, our vocations are lived out over an entire lifetime, and often the longer we live, the more hardened we can become. And as Nathaniel was just getting started off on his quest, on his vision, on his vocation and calling, Jesus said, "Follow me, see, believe, stay with it," and kept inviting to stay with him so that he would grow into maturity. But you can't stay out of the vocation and the calling of your life forever. You can take a time out, as Jesus did from time to time. He'd go up on a high mountain to catch some rest. But life is a marathon race, as St. Paul noted, and we're long-distance runners. And it is that which is also important to recognize in your calling, so that you don't burn out from it, so that you're able to actually follow through and practice it over your lifetime. There was an interesting, last week, any of you watch Madam Secretary? It's on at 8 o'clock on the Sunday night. Yeah. We like Madam Secretary, yeah, that's pretty good. Well, anyhow, she came home from her official duties. She had been fighting with her older daughter before she went off to work, came home, and kept fighting with her as soon as she walked in the door from her official duties. All right, that sounds pretty familiar in some way. When she got home, and she and her daughter started fighting, Madam Secretary just stopped. She just stopped. And her daughter just stopped. And then Madam Secretary said, "I should stop defining you by by what I think are your worst moments. I should stop defining you by what I think are your worst moments. And then they started to talk about some of the good moments and some of the good qualities. And that's pretty much what, when you think about your vocation, that is what it is that you are doing with your life. When you're calling other people, your kids, grandchildren, friends, neighbors, whatever it is, to come to church, to express their vocations and to think through what the meaning of their lives are, that's what you're doing. You're inviting them to explore their better hidden selves with their vocations. The big question that was asked of Nathaniel, big question that's asked of us is always the same. Knowing what you know now about life, knowing what you know about yourself, what will you do with that knowledge? And it is precisely there that you will have and experience a calling from Jesus. We live in the recognition between what is and what someday will be. And that's why we have to have both our passion for the energy and focus, and why we also need to have a life of the mind so that we can think through how best to accomplish the calling that has been set before us. But that's your gift. It was the gift given to Nathaniel. It's the gift given to you and I. The gift of a calling, of a vocation. And it is to our direness in our lives to say no to it, because it will come back and bite us. Because once Jesus starts, he's not going to let go. And we've all had that experience too. And now let us join in singing hymn 4.